everybody. It is me. It is the Cyber Warrior. This is Cyber Warrior Studios, and I know you're all here for another amazing episode of Security Happy Hour, and I got a very, very, very awesome show planned for you today. We got a brand new guest, and I'm excited because me and him haven't talked about on the show at all up until today. So it'll be very interesting and intriguing, and I promise we got a lot of good things planned. So if you just hang out, stay tuned for about 10 seconds, and we'll be right back. And we're back. Like I said, about 10 seconds. See? And we're here. With me this evening, I have the one and only Brad Boris. And I think I pronounced that last name right.
You got it right.
So, cheers to you, brother. How you been, man?
I have been busy as fuck. Let's just say that. So this last year, I finished my degree program over at Wilmington University. Got my associates for cybersecurity. I'm going to start at WGU probably in the next month or so. Wait for all that bullshit to finish up. I also did a stint on MITRE threat framework, MITRE attack framework. It was in September at HughSecCon, and hopefully I'm going to be able to speak again probably around September, October timeframe at HughSecCon again. It's been a busy year. I've had a lot going on. I've had a lot of, new connections as far as LinkedIn. I've had a lot of opportunities. I'm doing a lot of development work on the side. It's just been go, 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 go.
Yeah. And it's crazy because some years, especially in this industry, when you start getting into conferences and talking and doing, speaking engagements, it could be extremely busy. But then there's other years where you're doing your 9 to 5 and nothing happens. Whether it's because your RFP doesn't get accepted or there's just nothing going on or you choose not to. Some years can be slammed and other years you're just like, what am I going to do? I got nothing to do now. So with all that being said, though, I want to talk about security architecture, defense in depth, things like that. But before we do, why don't you give us a little bit of a rundown and background kind of on how you got into cybersecurity?
Sure. Now, I don't know if we have that kind of time to start from the very beginning, but, I'll ease our way into lubricant. Yeah. And by lubricant, I mean a little bit of alcohol.
That's right.
So starting off, I would say I'll just go back. Early in my career, I worked in help desk, and I started out after the military, doing everything and pretty much anything I could to get my feet in the door. Once I was in, it was rebuilding systems, installing operating systems. It was pretty much go and blow. I worked for a small engineering firm, and they were growing at the time. I started taking over the daily engineering tasks, setting up users in Novell NetWare and setting up users in AD back when AD was Windows 2000. And as we progressed and time went on, I started moving along in my career and started moving more from the engineering side to some of the architecture side. I did a lot of, stints doing build outs for large enterprise organizations, doing things like Active Directory deployments, doing things like firewall deployments, design work. I did a stint of design work for United Airlines for a while as well. And while I was at United Airlines, I had a colleague that was there that was really pushing me to do more. And it wasn't so much, Brad, all this stuff about IT. You've been doing this for about 15, 16 years, and you're doing really well, but you've got a really good sense and knack for security. You understand how things fit, but you also understand that extra step that needs to go forward to make things secure. And I said, I honestly, there's a reason for that. Is I want to be able to deploy something. I want to manage, install, configure. And while I manage, install, and configure, that also means updating it and putting it in a best practice deployment. And he's like, dude, you need to go get a certification in security. And I was like, man, I'm not that smart. I don't know this shit. I can fix stuff. I can put stuff in place. I can do research. He said, that's all you need. Just go look at a certification. I was like, okay. Boris comes back. He's like, so what'd you look at? He's like, you should look at the CISSP. And I was like, man, I looked at the Security Plus, and that just seemed like no. I'm going to get you a book. I'm going to point you in the right direction. Go do this. I was like, fine. So I was a contractor at the time for United Airlines. Boris is one of the architects that worked there, he was just really, really pushing me. And I was like, okay, fine. So I go get a book. I start skimming through the book. I'm like, wow, this shit pretty simple. It's really straightforward. It gives you a good understanding of what security is, CIA triad, domains, how those pertain to IT projects, how that pertains to leadership, how that pertains to business to an extent. And I'm like, okay, I kind of get the concepts. And he's like, just go take a class. I said, fine. So I took a week off from work because I was a contractor, didn't get paid for my class, came in, sat down in the class, and the instructor's sitting there. He's going, man, will you do this in security and this in security? And I was like, why do you do that? I wouldn't do that. It's like, you can put GPOs in place within this environment and you can prevent these types of things from happening. You can put GPOs to allow this and this, and you have an EDR solution, or at the time, an antivirus, anti-malware solution. You would put it in place and you block this down. And ultimately, you would have a good, solid foundation for some of these machines, some of these configurations, be baseline, you'd be good to go. And the guy looked at me and was like, in this class, I can really tell who's going to pass and who's going to fail, or who's going to have to subsequently take the exam. And I have a feeling that you're going to go and take the exam and you're going to pass first time. And I was just like, man, you're blowing smoke up my ass. Well, I don't know this stuff. I'm just telling you what I know from my experience. So fast forward the 6-week course, I get out, scheduled, take my exam, fucking knock it out of the park. And the moment I put that on my LinkedIn profile and I update my resume, this is back in 2016, and it's just like, boom, fucking fire hose. People calling me, text messaging me, sending me emails, hitting me up on LinkedIn. Hey, Brad, I saw you got your CISSP. You've got all this experience in Active Directory. You've got all this experience with Cisco switching and routing. You've got all this experience in Windows servers 2000, 2003. You've got all this experience in 2008. I was like, yeah, come be a security engineer. And I had an opportunity to go work with a good friend of mine, Michael Oberlander, who was at the time worked for Tailored Brands, and he was their CISO. And he kind of took me under his wing and gave me some pointers. And from there, I just fucking exploded. I went and I worked as a security manager for a while. And for the longest time after being a security manager, I've worked in architecture. So that's been everything from, network security architecture to information security architecture to security solutions architecture. And I know that's a lot of fucking terms for architecture, but I'm happy to go through each one roughly about what they do and what they pertain. For me, it's just been go, 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 go. Look at a problem, find a solution, work with people, get it implemented. Or if I was the one, fuck it, I would get it implemented. We have stuff we got to do. We got to get it done. And that's how we do it.
Yeah. So what was the hardest part for you? Was it just buckling down and getting the certification to then get into it? Was it like where do you find you struggled the most really getting into security?
I'll be honest, it was my confidence. Yeah. I was one of those ultra introverted guys in IT. I would sit there and I would read books. I would go look at videos online when we had just a handful. YouTube wasn't around at the time, or at least it was very, very young. I would go watch online videos where I could find them, and I would just read and decimate as much as I could and consume as much as I could. And then I built my own home labs, and I would go, 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 go. But when it came to the level of confidence that I had, it was terrible. I was really off put and frightened when I would get into situations where I would talk with other people. I had a very hard time when I would go meet with anybody that had manager or a higher title above that. I just couldn't do it. It scared the shit out of me. I mean, to be quite frank, I could not do that. And when I was sitting there and I was talking with Boris Priven, he was the guy over at United Airlines. He's no longer there. He's moved on. But when I was talking with Boris, he was really giving me a lot more confidence and stirring up and saying, look, you've got to be able to do this. You can talk with these people. You can talk with me. You can talk with these people.
Right.
And a lot of it just came down to, me thinking back to when I was in the Army and thinking back to situations I had prior to that. And it's like, look, just fucking suck it up. Have some confidence, take a deep breath, and dive into it. You'll get through it. Worst that happens is you fail. And if you fail, you learn something and then you move on. You will eventually succeed. And that's what I did. I failed a shit ton throughout my career, but I am still fairly successful.
You can't succeed unless you fail.
Hmm.
You're going to fail at something. You can't be afraid to do it. And, and so I think, though, it goes a long way, and it lends to an understanding for people that have failed and then finally made it. I think people really struggle when they fail once and then they become hesitant and continue to fail because they don't have the confidence that they initially had.
Yep, I agree.
And so they get really put off and then start doubting themselves, and then it snowballs from there. So I think that is one of the biggest things, especially to get up to something like an architect level, me at a manager level, or what have you. Like, you need to still exude that confidence. You need to be able to walk into any place like you own the place. Still be willing to learn from everybody, but when you walk in, you're the one that knows what you're talking about. And if you're wrong, and don't be afraid to admit it. But when you know something, don't hedge your bets. Don't hesitate. Don't second guess yourself. If you know it, you know it. Go out there and speak it. And I think a lot of people struggle with that. They get, like you said, they get into a room with like a director or a manager or a CISO or a CEO, and they're like, I think maybe possibly this might no, no one's going to take you seriously because then you could know and be saying exactly the right thing, but because you
Sure.
don't have the confidence behind it, no one's going to listen to you. No one's going to take you seriously. Um, so I think we need to get better with that. But with that, though, so you're an architect now, correct?
I'm kind of in between. So currently, I'm working a job where I'm more of a technical lead slash manager slash pretty much anything, everything that my organization needs me to do. Prior to this,
You're a
I
signal
have been
forger
an
now, is
architect.
what you are.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, yeah. I've been an architect most of my security career, and to be honest, I've been in ITIS now. It'll be 26 years this year,
Yeah.
so very, very long time.
So with that though, eh, do you feel so? I heard a long time ago, and I think it's still true to this day. You who has been an architect and kind of been down in the weeds in Active Directory land and things like that. Um, do you feel we're still putting band-aids on issues, right? So, and what I mean by that is when the internet first came around, so you had DARPANET and all that, and then they came out the internet, all these internet connected devices, security was never a concept. Security didn't exist. It was make the blinky lights blink, and if they blink, no one's going to do anything wrong, and we could trust everybody. And then they started putting firewalls and band-aids and all this other stuff on it, and so it became a patchwork system of security. Not, it wasn't built with security in mind. I want to say I don't know of anything other than maybe a select few operating systems, and that's only because people don't feel like taking the time of day to break into them. Are designed with security in mind. Do you feel we're still putting patchworks in place and band-aids versus actually designing programs and networks with security in mind?
Yeah, to be honest, there's a fair amount of truth to that. Looking at systems, and it's not just from the vendor slash manufacturer side. They also have to look at it from the business side. Businesses are looking at solutioning and how that needs to be integrated within their environments.
Mhm.
Businesses don't give a shit about security. They ultimately there to turn around a profit, and IT security, those are not profit centers. They cost money. So they're looking at reducing risk. They're looking at implementing security solutions because of regulatory requirements. They're looking at trying to bet on their infrastructure, trying to bet on their systems, bet on their development.
Mhm.
And that's not always the best thing. Now, there are plenty of orgs out there that do try and do put forth best effort. And by all sense, I can't say every org that I've worked for has done this, but a fair amount of them have. They hire the right people. They get in, they take an unbiased look at why we have systems in place, why we have people process data and technology, why those things are in place, how they're in place, how they need to be interlinked together, how they need to communicate, what the interdependencies are.
Mhm.
And then they look at it from an unbiased view and how we can take that solutioning and secure those infrastructures, those architectures, those people process data and technology. It's tough. Because, again, at the end of the day, a business is trying to make money. Us as solution providers, security professionals, technology providers, we're a hindrance to the business. We're taking money out of their pocket. So, to make a long story short, yeah, there are orgs that are out there that do that or are trying to do that. It's just really, really hard. They're trying to, meet all of these challenges on a day-to-day basis. Like my previous employer was Walmart. We struggled a lot looking at what we had from an asset management perspective and solution perspective, and then security control perspective, and trying to mitigate things like app sprawl and security
Right.
control sprawl, try and consolidate that stuff, and also making the environment secure, but also allowing people to do their jobs. And a lot of that typically comes down to, yeah, I can make the most secure, system in the world, but that's also going to be encased in concrete, that's, encased in steel, that's buried inside of a fucking volcano.
Well, and
So
you
not
said
practical.
something there though, because I've worked in the PCI space, right? And we all know
Mm-hmm.
Walmart processes their own credit cards; they don't go through a vendor, so they have to be at the highest PCI compliant you can get. It's
Correct.
PCI DSS. I forget what the levels
4.0, yeah.
are. So with that being the case, though, and this is what I have found personally in my experience, and tell me maybe you've seen differently. When we're looking at these things, they will do the utmost to secure those processing systems. And even though there may be some form of link from point A into the internal network, your
Mm-hmm.
corporate network, they find every chance they can get to say, oh, these are outside of the audit. So we're not going to do as much with those. We're only going to work on these. And so then your internal systems fail. They don't get patched as
Mm-hmm.
frequently. They become years behind on server patches,
Yep.
especially a company like Walmart, you reboot their server. Now, every second that server's down, they're like, we're losing like $3 million every second or whatever, right? If that server
Yep.
reboots. So do you find that companies are doing the right thing for the PCIs? I still say PCI is a failure and they're still doing the wrong thing, but let's just say, um, but with that, they're neglecting their internal network.
I'll definitely say this, and I'm not going to speak on behalf of Walmart, but I can say with the majority of e-commerce that I've had to deal with throughout my career, that has definitely been a challenge. Yes, we will do everything in our utmost to secure PCI data. 100%. We will lock that down, or we will defer as much as we possibly can. We'll use third parties if we can.
Which is the
That'll
bigger
really
issue
take,
because now you're relying on a
of
third party
course,
to secure something that you should be responsible for.
this is true, but that's also within that regulation. So they
Uh-huh.
can still meet those regulatory requirements, push that risk off because it's no longer their problem. Not saying Walmart, but again, pretty
Again,
much any
I've seen it
e-commerce
too in
or
other
any third party.
companies. Yeah.
Well, of course. We look at it subjectively. It's all about the risk that's inherent in, circling back to that question. Yeah, they wind up having, and it's not just on the security side. I mean, it's, you start looking at tech and organizations, especially organizations that have been around for a very long time, 5, 10, 15, and they start getting up and they start growing and they have all of this tech debt, all of this tech debt. They've got old code on legacy servers that they're trying to run for internal processes. Yeah, that shit is very, very far
I see
behind.
it now and I fucking hate it. I'm
Yeah, it
like, dude,
sucks.
when's the last time you upgraded this server? And they're
Hmm.
like, we haven't. Have you ever patched it? No. Why? Because the last time we tried, it crashed. And you've not
Yep.
wanted to rewrite it or put it on something modern? No. No, we're scared. Like, come on, people. It's like
I do
selling
remember it.
running, Windows 3.1. You
Yeah.
can't
No,
breach it
I
if you're not doing it.
the funny part is you mentioned Windows 3.1, and I do remember working for an employer in the 2000s, and I'm not going to name the employer, but I'm sure someone would be able to figure out that at a certain location, they still ran a Windows 3.1.2 environment so that they could run software on that specific machine,
Uh,
and it was not virtualized.
well, look at
So,
Banks. Banks ran
yeah.
Cobalt code, and even now, I'm sure there's still some around. But
Oh,
I
yeah.
have seen machines actually updated with Windows 7 at the very least. And so, at least they're not running COBOL code. Like their code actually has a GUI and actually looks pretty
Yeah.
decent now. But those banks still exist, especially a lot of your credit unions are still running COBOL.
Yes. Yep. And that's not
So
uncommon. I've worked in that industry as well. I've worked in almost every single industry. I'll be, perfectly frank. I've seen a lot of things, and that's the one thing that is great about being an architect is you have that opportunity
mhm,
and you go and you see all these different things and you look at how solutioning is done and you see how people have done things. And some people have done things really, really exceptionally well. They've taken these challenges and they've figured out ways economically and viably to secure. And then you look at it on the flip side, you come in and you're like, what the fuck is going on? So, there's that fine balance between, these organizations that hire the most talented people that come in and they like hone in on the
mhm.
solutioning. They figure out how to do stuff. And then you got it on the flip side where you have people that have been in organizations for 10, 15 plus years that have no clue how to do their job and they barely do patch management on
Well, and
systems.
that's
It's
and I
scary.
think we see that more in critical infrastructure than we do
True.
in general like retail spaces. I think retail
Yes.
spaces is more um has more of a what's that the word I'm looking for? Um uh like a more fluctuation of employees. They're more willing to
Sure.
leave and go other places. But critical infrastructure, because your job is so secure, right? Hospitals don't want to lose people; they can't afford to. Banks, power companies, gas companies,
Yep.
like at those types of places, it becomes very difficult for you to lose your job. So you become comfortable. And so, why learn something new if you don't have to? They're not going to fire me, so why would I do it? Or you've been there so long, you have the ear of like the CTO or the CIO, and you're like, oh no, 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 we need to stick with this because of X, Y, and Z. Seen that happen, but then you bring up risk and business risk. I also want to bring up financial risk, and I think
Hmm.
we see it a lot in those areas because you will have something like a hospital person, so let's say, and they will go out and they will spend say $5 billion, and this will be like 10 years ago, $5 billion to a company that says, oh yeah, we're going to have we're going to do quarterly updates and patches and keep you going and this at the third, and then 2 years later they go out of business, they go bankrupt.
Yep.
And so now, as an organization, and we all know these hospitals are run by boards. They're no longer the doctors are no longer in charge. It's the freaking boards that are. So it's a business more than it's about helping people. They'll look at it and go, "Oh well, we can't afford another $10 billion on a new system." And it's like, "Well, why not?" Well, because we need our bonuses, so we're not going to do it. And so I think in an industry like that, you should care more about what systems you have than what's in your pocket. And I think too many hospitals now are being run by a board. The doctors can bitch and complain all they want, but it's not going to change anything because they're not owners.
I mean, it comes down to people. I mean, at
Mhm.
the end of the day, yeah, you've got to account for your stakeholders in your organization. You got to account for whatever regulatory compliance that you have to meet. But if you're in an industry where you directly impact people, one of the things that I always preach is people, process, data, and technology, and everything within that specific order.
Right.
You're only as strong as your weakest link. If you build up your people, you work on your process. If you build up your process, you work on you know, your people, process, data, and technology. You work on your data. You work on your technology last because usually that's the easiest thing to fix.
Mhm.
The hardest thing to fix is the one that you work on the front end, which is people, and
Right.
making sure that you provided them the tools to be successful to do what it is that they need to do. And that's not just security awareness training, that's making them understand why we do things as an organization. And it's not me trying to preach, hey, go use a specific solution. No, it's really you have to understand
Well, and
why
that's the
we
big
do
thing that I
things.
think we fail at
Yeah.
as a security organization, right? You have all these companies that came out with computer based training for cyber awareness. Hell, we saw it in the military
Hmm.
for years, and they still do it. But like, they never say why. They never show the effect. They never actually explain how to avoid it. They're just, oh, don't click links. They don't tell you how to recognize a phishing email. They don't show
It's
you.
not relatable. I mean,
Right.
at the end of the day, it's not relatable. How does it impact me personally?
Right.
And
So I
that
think from an
needs to be
architect standpoint,
demonstrated.
again, to your point, people. And
Mhm.
so one of the things, and it's a catch-22, but when I look at security, if I work in a company and I'm saying HR, I don't want to go to security and tell them, hey, I screwed up. But if you as an organization hire an outside trainer to come in and offer cyber awareness training and show you legitimately how to recognize email, how to recognize bad websites, how to what the outcome is, show valid data, valid information, how it can affect them in the long run, not just the company, but them as an individual. Then open it up to like say questions or say, hey, I'll stay after if anybody wants to talk type of deal. You'll have more engagement and these people will be willing to learn.
Yep.
When you mandate a monthly, quarterly, annual, whatever cyber awareness, computer based training, all you're doing is wasting my time. I'm going to click get to the next because here's what's going to happen. You're going to send out a phishing email as a hey, we need to see who does what, like know before or anything else like that. And if you click the link, what's the worst you're going to do? Oh, I'm going to go back through this training, get through it and be done. There's no repercussions. It's
Yep.
like, okay, so I got to take 5 minutes, go through this bullshit, and be done with my day. Whatever. But if you have someone there in person for them to talk to, I think it has a lot more power than just
It does.
here's computer based training. And I just think companies don't want to pay for it because to have someone travel to you and do those classes, you might lose $1 million by pulling your people out of their cubicles for 2 hours versus letting them do a 10-minute computer based training that you've decided that you're going to pay for annually.
And they may spend $1 million for that. I mean, the reality is that's not that difficult to do.
No.
When I worked as a security manager, I went around, pushed out security training, and then I would also meet with teams and say, look, here's the reason why we're doing this training. Why I want to make sure you understand what's going on. And I
Right.
would take it from a personal aspect. What I've seen personally is I've seen like my grandmother who got a phone call from somebody, didn't know who it was, thought it was a family member. They said, hey, I'm in trouble. I need money. And they're like, oh, I didn't know you needed money. Is there a way I can help you out? Yeah. Can I send you an email? It'll get you some information and we can go from there. And unfortunately, that directly impacted me personally and my grandmother of, there's some shit that goes down and now she has a direct loss of money that she had in her account. And I've got to work with her to try and rectify that situation. But we need to bring that personal approach. I mean, aside from the whole security awareness aspect of it, people have to understand why we want to do things. We have to not only make it approachable, we have to make security personal, we have to make them understand, not push it as just some regulatory bullshit mandate because it doesn't help. Just
Yeah.
some fucking random email doesn't do any good. Me being in architecture, I've kind of, extrapolated myself away from that, but I do sit down and when I meet with stakeholders, I really want to find out what their concerns are because their concerns ultimately are what are driving the things that I need to get done.
Right.
I would meet
And
with
that's how
my
you'll get
chief
financial backing and approval for it because if you
exactly.
don't
Yeah.
know what they care about, but also in the same token though, I find some of even like your security directors, managers, they don't know what they're looking for. Like, so I don't know how
Yeah.
they got in the position they're in because like, all right, so what's important to you? Well, you tell me. But it's your company. Like, I don't
Yeah.
I don't know your environment. I'm coming in as a managed service provider. Like, you tell me what is important to you as an organization. What do you want to see? Um, and when they don't know, it's like, well, we want you to tell us.
There's that disconnect.
I'm like,
That's a big problem. And it's not just, I mean, even on the tech side, I've seen where you've got technology professionals, you've got security professionals. There's that disconnect between,
Yeah.
yeah, we've got to keep our stuff up and running. We've got to go install this, configure this, get this going. We've got to secure things, and we've got to make sure people, know we're securing this, and we've got to make sure our auditors secure this. But in the same instance, you have business stakeholders in different divisions that say, hey, I don't sleep well at night because of this one thing. Well, what is this one thing? This is important. And this needs to be communicated back to tech. It needs to be communicated back to security.
Mm-hmm.
It needs to be communicated back to board of directors. All of that needs to be understood. I need to know what the risks are that are involved. If you're not sleeping well at night because you've got a piece of deprecated technology that's 15, 20 years old and it's limping by, and IT keeps saying, I don't have the budget for this, and you're not going to pay for this, we've got to work out a solution and say, look, senior leadership, stakeholders, we have a problem. This is the tech that's in place. This is directly impacting people. We need to do something about it.
Right.
We need to have those types of discussions, and they need to be unbiased, unfiltered when it comes directly to what that source problem is.
Right.
We're ultimately trying to solve problems, but those problems typically revolve around money. Yeah, it's going to be expensive. We're going to have to replace a system. There's a lot of processes that are involved. We're going to have to retrain people. There's data that's going to have to be migrated. There's new tech that's going to have to be leveraged. But the reality is, this is a faltering system. This will go away. It will fail.
And I think part of it comes down to, and I think really right now what we're looking at is it used to be when everything was hardware. You knew what you had and the cost to upgrade it, right? It was as simple as, all right, I'm gonna spend $1,000 right now, get 3 new hard drives at 8 terabytes a piece, and we'll run for another 5 years or whatever. Like you could put those, you can logically go through and figure that out. But now with the cloud, now everything comes down to like not only what is your hardware, but what's your runtime. So now to really figure out what something's going to cost you, it becomes even harder. So you do the bare minimum. You're like, all right, well, I'm going to run this type of server. So I only need 2 cores of CPU and like 8 gigs of RAM. My desktop has more than that. But it's like, and this is a server we're talking about. And so you'll look at something of like, oh, maybe it's just a file server. So that's all we need. Is it really though? Because you also have to think this is Windows, which means Windows is also going to eat up about half that RAM. And then you have to add on, it's still part of your network. So you need to run an EDR. And so then maybe a firewall or whatever else, right? Whatever else is running on that. That 2 cores and 8 gigs isn't even going to run anymore. Like, it doesn't matter what you do. And so I look at this and people look at it like, well, we need to maintain costs. Go back to hardware. Like, legitimately, that's the only answer I can give in regulate your power. Like, because at that point, the only fluctuating cost you're going to have is your power bill versus, oh, we stood up 10 new servers for whatever reason and then brought them down. So now you have this fluctuating cost. Dude, just freaking go back to a data center. Like,
they wind up doing that. They don't realize what the impact is going to wind up being. They don't think about, and this is me on the architecture side going, okay, well, what's your business continuity plan? What's your DR plan for this? Are you going to have a hot
cloud? We're good.
Yeah. And then you know what?
I've seen that shit.
And you look at cloud, and that shit is completely down.
Yeah.
The reality is they still don't know what they have. They don't know how it works.
Yep.
That's when you really need to have the right people in place. Again, going back to people, process, data, and technology, having the right people in place, knowing what you have, how it works, what those processes are.
The process and data, I think, is the biggest part in that. After the people, for the reason of you need asset management. So in order to really architect a solution, you need to know what you have. And if you don't know what you have, your solution it may work temporarily, but you know how many issues you're going to run into? It's ridiculous. I have legitimately seen systems get set up because the architect wasn't given all the information. And so they get sold something. Because let's be fair, in a managed service provider, your architect are basically technical salespeople. They're technical people that just happen to do sales. So they sell these solutions and say, oh, yeah, you want X, Y, and Z. It'll cover this, this, and this. So on and so forth. May the gods be ever in your favor type of deal. Because they don't have all the info. And so then you get in there And like you've got this entirely complex network that's like thousands and thousands and thousands of systems and users and servers and I need to be able to cloud print and I need to be able to do this, and this. And it's like, where was this information out the get-go?
Yep.
I would have told you half this shit wouldn't have worked. Like I would have been like, dude, you don't want to do this. You don't. This is designed for small business. This is designed for mid business. And bitch, you need the most expensive shit on the market just for your freaking network. Like it ain't gonna work. And so I look at it and I'm just I think architects sometimes get a bad rap because companies don't know what they have.
That's
Because
true.
they go in and their asset management is so piss poor. They don't have a database. You've got one team managing things on one set of spreadsheets, another team managing their assets on another set of spreadsheets. Everybody's using Excel and basically turning into secretaries at this point because they live in freaking Excel trying to do this. And so when you try to architect a solution, you're like, all right, well, how many servers are in the network? Today, 1,100, but tomorrow it could be 1,300. What do you mean tomorrow it could be 1,300? Oh, well, you see, sometimes we set up these test servers and we do some things for a little while, and then we'll shut them down a week later, but that's putting load on your network. Like, can we think this through, please? And, like, it makes life so much harder for architects. So much harder.
The sad reality of that is that's 100% correct, and it doesn't matter what organization you're talking about, whether that's a small, medium business or an enterprise or an organization as large as my previous employer. We all run through the exact same struggles, the same problems as it pertains to asset management.
Yeah.
We come in, we get so much tech debt, we have so much tech sprawl across multiple apps, across multiple platforms. And then you pull in architects that are just trying to figure out, for one, what it is exactly that you have, and then what that is communicating to, or how that is communicating to something. Looking at that upstream, downstream, that is a giant pain in the ass. And not having any level of documentation, or having 10-plus-year-old documentation on something that needs to be replaced, that sucks so much ass. It is so horrible. But the reality is, it's 100% across every single business that's out there. No one knows what they have. No one does a good job at asset management. I had the
I'll tell you who does.
Prior.
I'll tell you who does. The small mom and pop that is running a Comcast fucking personal router with 2 laptops in their office, they're doing a fantastic job. Because you go in there and you say, what do you have for technology? You're like, oh, I got my laptop, my wife got her laptop, and we got this Comcast router right here. Yep. But I know exactly how to secure that. We're going to download this software real quick.
The sad part is that is 100% too. Coming from some of the largest organizations in the world, coming from some of the smallest organizations in the world, every single organization, and I mentioned this in, at HughesecCon last year, talking about, MITRE ATT&CK framework.
Yeah.
Every organization struggles with asset management.
Oh,
and it doesn't matter if it's tech, if it's a business entity within the organization, it's security, it doesn't matter. We all suck at it.
It's getting even worse now. Actually, it's gotten worse over probably. So when did I get my first Android? When did Android come out? 5, 6. So I had my son in 2008, got married in 2010. Around 2007, I think, is when the Motorola Droid came out, around that time. 2007, 2008.
Probably about that time, yeah.
So BlackBerries, in order to be on the network, always had to have a BES. You always had to have your BlackBerry Enterprise server, which means in order to get email, you had to be in there. So you knew what everybody had. And it was secure to your network because it had this server. It was part of your network. So BYOD wasn't necessarily a thing until the smartphone came out. The moment you had Android and iPhone come out, BYOD went rampant. And then on top of that, you went to O365 or AWS, some type of cloud infrastructure, GCP. So now I can even access my work email. I can access Teams. I can access whatever, all from my phone, which is not company owned. And now you
had Microsoft ActiveSync back in 2000.
I fucking hated
2007, hooked up to Exchange. And you had to have FTP to be able to have cross communication.
And you know how many accounts I locked out because every time you changed your password, Your phone insisted on constantly talking back to the Exchange server with the wrong
Yep.
password, and you'd go to log in and be like, "Nah, homie, you can't. You're locked out." What do you mean? Oh crap! I forgot to change my phone password.
I
Dang
am an old
it.
Exchange admin. I get it.
Dude,
That
it
and
was
mobile
so
network.
bad. So bad. I locked out my account more times than I could. And then insecurity wasn't a thing. So it wasn't like you were
Mhm.
getting a call from security saying, "Hey, were you trying to log in?" Like, no, that would have given you warning. No, you had no warning. You just went to work on a Monday and were like, "Shit, I can't
Yep.
log. Dang it, let me call the help desk."
Sad part is when you are the help desk, and then you got
Right.
to figure out what the
I
problem
was
is.
in the Air
And I've
Force
been
and
there.
Army. I was both. It got so bad. But now, like with O365, you change your password and it immediately warns you. It's like, hey, you cycled your password. Let's change it. Oh, yeah, you're right. Let me put the new one in real quick. Um, but yeah, man, like, and so brute forcing was easy,
Oh yeah.
easy because there was no MFA, and even now you still have companies that don't do MFA. And and let's be fair, as much as it's needed, man, is it a pain in my ass? I'll be in the middle of doing something. I'm like, I'll either get timed out on one of my computers and be like, "Hey, is this you?" Put in the code. I'm like, "Wait, let me check. Is it me? I got like 3 computers here. Well, not that one. Not that one. Yeah, that's me.
Yep.
Let me make sure it's right."
Being a security professional, how many, accounts that I have that are configured with MFA and how frequently I have to go through those. Like I have to scroll and then I'm
Nope.
scrolling. I'm like, good God, this is taking fucking forever.
Dude, be
I'm just
in a
looking for a
managed
damn
service,
code.
Brad, where you gotta look and you legitimately have all these different clients with MFA and they're all through like Microsoft Authenticator or something. So you're literally
Hmm.
scrolling like, where's the right one? Where's the right one? Where's the
Yep.
right that one? Okay, that's the one I want.
And then by the time you start punching it in, it's already too late. It's already cycled
Yeah,
through.
it
It's
already
such a
cycled. You'll be
fucking
all
pain.
right.
I mean, I'll be honest. That's one of the reasons why I love using a YubiKey. Just a hardware token. It makes things
I'm mad
so
I
much
lost my
easier.
Google Titan key. I gotta find it.
Oh,
I've had 2 of them. The first one broke. Um, it was plugged into the back of my computer, and I don't know if I hit it, my kids hit it, or the dog hit it. Somebody hit it, and
yeah.
so the USB snapped from the inside.
Bent. Yeah.
So I bought another one, and I can't find it. And so now, thankfully, I set up like multiple forms of MFA on my accounts. So I'm like, hey Google, can you just send an alert to my phone real quick, please, so I can get it? Uh, but nah, man. Other than that, man, what is? I'm gonna let you have the floor for a few minutes because I really want you to dig into kind of what the life is like of being an architect, the ups, the downs, and how people can kind of get into that field. Because me and coming from help desk all the way up, like there's various routes you can take. So kind of give them the upside and downsides of doing what you do these days, or
Sure.
in previous days.
So from the architecture side, it's really getting, every architecture role is different. You've got architecture roles that are focused on like network security. You've got some that are focused around, information security, where they're looking at things like GRC, governance, risk, compliance, and they're looking at that level of policy, standard procedure. They're doing risk assessments, or they're looking at, specific regulatory compliance and how those need to be shaped as it pertains to specific security controls within their environments. Zero trust architecture is another one. I mean, I'll be fucking honest. I absolutely hate the term zero trust. I know there's a lot of people that absolutely love that. And I was a big proponent when it came to the Cloud Security Alliance and, pushing and helping to develop their CCZT certification. But, again, you've got so many facets as it pertains to architecture. The reality is, everybody is going to come up into that role differently. You're going to have people who have been in development that are going to go into like information security development. They're going to look at, how to develop secure applications or how to secure existing applications, OWASP, whatever, or whatever app, inclusion, whatever, it doesn't really matter. You're going to have people that are like me that come from a help desk background, work their way up into engineering. You'll have individuals that just want to jump right into it. And the biggest challenge is just being able to grasp. You got the people side, which, to be honest, the people side on the architecture front isn't nearly as bad as when you start moving down to process. People are significantly easier as it pertains to architecture, but when it comes to process and understanding how things work, how things talk, how things integrate, what upstream, downstream, what regulatory compliance based around specific data types, that becomes a humongous challenge. As it pertains to data, going, circling back around to, specific data types as they pertain to, GDPR or PCI DSS or HIPAA or SOX, you have to have a very good understanding of what those data types are, what the regulations are around that, and then how to secure that data around that specific regulatory compliance. And it becomes a humongous challenge, but it's grasping the core concepts of what those frameworks essentially are and how you can apply those to your architecture knowledge. When it comes down to things like, I want to transition from, say, a senior engineer role into an architecture role, what's really the challenge is just moving past data, moving past process, and then understanding all of the technology. So me being tasked as an architect, I would get randomly thrown into a project, and the project would be, hey, we're developing this web application that's going to, go into a specific, cloud service provider environment. It could be Azure, it could be GCP, it could be Oracle, it could be, Tencent. It doesn't really matter. And we're thinking about what are the security controls that we can align around the specific architecture. So we start talking about, what is it? How does it talk? What's the core components of whatever this application is? That, is it customer facing? Is it not customer facing? If it's customer facing, does it have a web front end? Is it Apache? Is it IIS? Is it Nginx? Something along those lines. Are you using a WAF? Are you doing logging and monitoring? Do you have some kind of MFA, identity and access management solution that's being injected into it? Are you looking on the back end from the database side? And what type of database is it? Is it an SQL, non-SQL database? Is it whatever? You're just trying to wrap your mind around all of this tech, and then what would be the best course of action to try and secure that? And you're also thinking about not only all of this technology that goes around it, but you're also trying to think about how this data is aligned and what the data is, because ultimately you have to know what the data is, how you need to secure it based on regulatory compliance. And then if you're a good architect and you care, you want to make sure that you're not only meeting like the baseline requirements, but you're going above and beyond to make sure that as I'm suggesting doing this, that those are the baseline requirements to secure this environment, that I'm also doing these extra 2 or 3 steps to make sure that I get, business continuity out of my solution, because I want to make sure that if there is a catastrophic failure, that this can fail over in an HA scenario and bring up this application, and there's seamlessness to the app for the end user, for our consumers. That's what I care about, because not only do I want to make sure that this is up for the business side, but I also want to make sure the consumer has access to it. When it comes down to that, it's a humongous onset. You have to understand all these little things. That doesn't mean you need to know every single thing. I'll be very clear. I don't know everything. I know this much and about this deep in a lot of different areas, but it really comes down to just being able to understand on the fly and being able to talk through that and ask a lot of fucking questions. If
So
you're unsure,
would you think that, in your opinion, would you say a CISO, which is business and non-technical, really, right?
Mhm.
Would you put an architect, especially if you've been in the industry long enough and got to that level, would you consider them the technical equivalent to a CISO? A
God,
CISO
I
sits
would
on
hope
the
not.
board and doesn't really. They're more business risk. So the
Yes.
technical side of it is just you have a director or someone reporting up to them. Would you put an architect who is trying to actually design the solutions as a technical equivalent to a CISO?
I'm not going to say they're the same. So let's be very, very clear. There's a very straight delineation between that business facing entity, that CISO, that BISO or BISO, whatever you want to call them, or
Mhm.
CISO, VP security esque role that has to report directly to C level. They have to report to other entities within the business. Architecture is its own beast. I mean, we're really doing some of the deep dives, either from a technical aspect or from a people, process, and data aspect,
Mhm.
looking at how things need to function. And then we're working in conjunction with CISOs, with BISOs, with deputy CISOs, VPs to provide them more or less metrics on how things are going, what's going on, how that's functioning, where we see gaps. Because a lot of times we'll be doing gap analysis that they had a third party come in, they thought they answered the attestation right, and it's complete, bullshit. And the reality is, no, that's not what we have in place. This is what we have in place, and this is how it functions. So, could an architect do that job? Sure. Are they necessarily the right person? Because I've been asked, would I be a CISO for a particular?
Well, no, no, no. I would never want an architect to be a CISO because I think they have their own lane.
Mhm.
My question really comes down to, so you have a CTO, and let's be fair,
Mhm.
all a CTO really does is just buy hardware. That's
They do.
legitimately what hardware is in my environment, and they buy shit. They kind of, if you don't have a CTO, you deal with your CFO. And sometimes you have both, but they're supposed to know what tech is in the environment. They half the time don't even know what the fuck it does. Let's be fair. But when I
Mhm.
look at an architect, because I've always said you should have a CISO, right? The one that knows the business and knows
Mhm.
the GRC policy procedure side of the business of we need to secure X, Y, and Z and follow this. But you still need someone technical that can get hands on and be in the nitty gritty at that same level so that you two can come together. Because I think too many times the CISO and your security director or your SVP of security, even then, as you move up in those levels, you're no longer hands on.
Yeah.
Your management, your director. So your knowledge of what something can truly do dwindles. Whereas at an
Yes.
architect and engineer level, you're still hands on.
Mhm.
You're still touching the equipment in some way, shape, or form. I think at that executive level, you need someone hands on.
You really need to have that level of synergy with your CISO, with your deputy CISO. That's one thing I'd say at several of my previous employers when I was working on projects, especially high profile projects like post quantum encryption, I
Mhm.
had significant involvement directly. And I'll talk on behalf of Walmart in this case, is I would have direct involvement and I would speak on behalf and talk with our CISO or our deputy CISO and say, look, this is what our findings are. This is, how things
Mhm.
are. This is my recommendation, and a lot of those were taken to heart. And it's like, okay, we have some serious situations. We need to do a little bit better, internal discovery on what we have from an asset perspective as it pertains to like PKI, and this is how we need to address this.
Right.
And those entities would take that to heart. That does not mean that they can't do that role. It just means that they are significantly less involved in that role. They're extrapolated. Their role is now facing those business entities and being able to talk to that. Doesn't mean I can't do it, but it's not necessarily my place. I mean, let's be frank. I don't think all C level want to see some long haired, big, bushy bearded guy with a band shirt and camo shorts coming in and saying, hey, your network's fucked up and you need to implement, these specific firewalls within this
But that's what they
configuration to be able
need.
to move forward.
It's so
It
so. All right,
is.
I got a comment here, and I'm going to put it up here in a second. But I want to say this. I one of the things that I think as a society has really destroyed our ability to communicate to business entities in the C level board is their perception of professionalism and how they take you seriously. Because to your
Yes.
point, I'm the type of person that'll roll up in a hoodie or a cutoff shirt or a sleeveless shirt or even a t-shirt. Half of it's going to be like grunt style or till Valhalla or whatever. Very
Yeah.
rarely anymore do I even wear a polo. And then I'll have on like some cargo pants or some jeans and my boots. That's how I go places. That's what I'm comfortable with. So like, but they won't take you seriously. Well, you're not a professional. We don't. I got tattoos like crazy. Like seriously, like I
Yeah.
I got a beard. Like so, I look at these things and it's funny. I try to show my tattoos, and like they don't show on camera because of the where they're at. Like, all of it's hard to
Yeah.
see. But I mean, so I got all this, but people still have this perception of like, oh, you need to dress a certain way for me to take you seriously. And it's like, without me, you wouldn't have a network. So do not take my lack of professionalism as I don't take my job seriously. The fact is, I care more about comfort and keeping your ass out of hot water than I do about impressing you with my looks.
This is true.
Like,
Very true.
without us, you'd have been hit with like 3 different ransomwares. Your dumbass probably would have paid them off, and they would have done it again a month later. Like, if not for us, you wouldn't have a company. And yet, it's still they look at people like us, and even the women of our industry that are complete fucking rock stars. And let's be fair, your execs right now will look at some of these women and be like, "You don't know what you're talking about. You know what? Let the men speak, dude. Shut the fuck up. She knows more than you'll know. She's probably forgot more than you've ever learned in your life. Like, don't go there." But we still see these discrepancies about who has intelligence within our industry. And it is the executives and the older heads that are there that have this vision of what professionalism is. And like, bitch, come watch my show. I'll run circles around you. Let's have some fun. Let's enjoy ourselves. But yeah, man. So I want to put this comment up here, and then we're gonna do how to get some movies in. But my guy right here who watches every week, love you, buddy. Security architects usually are rock stars that know how to build and relate, or they're so stuck on process and gates that they slow everything down. Finding someone in the middle is very difficult from his experience. Would you agree?
I would agree 100%. I've worked with architects that, like myself, will go in, will learn how to do something, regardless of level of comfort. I'm there to do a job. I'm there to make sure that the business is successful. I'm there to make sure things are secure. I'm there to fix people, process, data, and technology. As it pertains to my job, my role, and also as I can help the business. I've run into architects that are so set in their ways that they only do what it is that they know how to do. They are not doing anything else. I mean, it's the same regardless of where we go, anywhere in any career field. You're always going to have people that they know how to do their job. They do their job, and that's all they do. They pull their 9 to 5. They don't care about anything else. For me, it's not only about the job. I mean, I have to go and get stuff done. I run a mentorship program afterwards. I've got to go and meet with people after and say, look, this is what I did today. This is what my job is and how my job functions. If you were to get into my role, this is what you would be up against. This is how you would have to deal with this. Now, you would be making your own decisions, but I would suggest that you go out of your way to learn how to do that side of tech, that you understand the business, that you understand people, that you understand data, and you understand what regulatory compliance is. You understand what those security controls are. You don't have to know every single facet. You don't have to install every security control. You can work with engineers or just go fucking learn it. There's enough training that's out there for all of us. We can go hop on Azure and go learn training, or AWS or GCP. We can go to fucking, heaven forbid, Fortinet, curse word right there. Or Palo Alto and go
absolutely hammered.
Yeah, no shit. You can go learn every single platform that's out there. There's not really an excuse not to know this stuff. So I completely agree with it. It's a very common thing. You've got some people that are great, some people that are not.
Well, and so like you saw my post earlier today on LinkedIn. So like a lot of what I do outside of this show and my full-time job is about motivation, mental health, success goals, things like that. And so what I think people fail to realize is when you're first breaking in, you're gonna have to grind, which means you're gonna do your normal job. But then you still have to continue to learn. But you put a limit on that, right? You give yourself time boundaries. People think when you're grinding, you're never making time for anything else. No, it just means you're doing everything you can at work, learning everything you can, and then you have to do a few hours extra to learn even more. especially in this industry. If you're not continuously learning, you're behind an 8 ball. But once you get to a certain point in your career, you don't become complacent. You still go out and learn, but then your work day, you're able to time manage better. Sometimes
Yes.
you're able to learn during work as opposed to after work. You're able to do certain things, and as long as you get that time management down, you're good. But let's be fair, if you're an analyst, your eyes are glued to a screen your entire shift. You can't let
Yes.
anything go by. So you have to research after hours, or you better be running multiple screens. And you're like, okay, I'm going to take 20 minutes. I'm going to look at this. For 20 minutes, I'm going to look at that. For 20 minutes, I'm going to look at this. But again, it's time management. And so grinding is good. Always learning is good. We still have to find that balance. Unfortunately,
Yep.
when you're first breaking in your first few years of your career, it's going to be off balance. You're still going to be putting more effort into your career, your work, your goals, and everything else than you are family, friends, and going out and drinking. Because let's be honest, that's
It's true.
half the younger crowd. It's like, oh, I want to go to the club, I want to go play video games, I want to go do whatever, which is great, but it's going to be less time than what you want.
Yeah.
Because it's the only way you're going to get ahead in your career. You got to be willing to embrace the suck, and so that later on in life, 10, 15 years into your career, you're actually at a point where like I'm making good money, I'm going on vacations, I'm providing for my family, and I'm able to do all this. But those first few years, it's gonna suck.
They're very
I was
hard.
there. The army taught me to embrace the suck.
We've all been there. Yeah, I know. I personally know that too. Cool. Yeah. That's one.
So with that being said, though, Brad, what
Yeah.
is your advice and everything else for people trying to break in? Kind of what they're gonna have to deal with, and how us as professionals and seniors in this industry can really help the younger crowd coming in. By younger, I mean newer to the industry, not necessarily young
Sure.
as people.
Sure. So, I mean, it really comes down to networking. Before you do anything else, go out and network. Go meet people. Get off your fucking couch. Get out of your chair. Get out of your office. Get out of your room. Get out of your dorm room, whatever you can. And you go out there and you go meet people. Go to conferences. Go to local meetups like, Hackers Anonymous here that we have here in Houston. Go out and go meet people. Get a good feel for what it is people are doing. Network as much as you possibly can. Yeah, just as you said, I mean, and the reality is, regardless of what career field you get into initially, it is going to suck. You're going to be working 60 hours a week if you're lucky that's it. And you're going to be hustling as much as possible. But you also have to realize there needs to be balance between that. There's got to be some give and take, especially as it comes to your personal mental health. When you start getting older, it does become a little bit easier because you've already laid that foundation down for what it is you need to know to be able to do a job. And when you go roll in someplace else, it's a lot easier to say, well, yeah, we would do this, 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 and this because of this, this, and this. Take your time. Do a lot of research. Get a mentor. The biggest thing I can preach is getting a mentor. I do mentorship. I've been running a mentorship program since about 2014, 2013, a very, very long time. I've got well over a couple hundred mentees. What I always talk to them is you need to set boundaries. You need to set plans. You need to know what it is that you want to accomplish. You may not accomplish it initially, but build out that plan. And I sit down with them and I go through that step by step. You got to work on it and understand it is definitely going to suck. But after that 5-year mark, 6-year mark, it starts getting a lot easier.
Yeah. Yeah, man, I appreciate that. It's something that I've told a lot of people when I first got in the not when I first got in the army. When I got my first, when I became a 25 Delta, I was in this whole house for all my stance training and stuff. I had a lot of people ask me, how do you know all this? And so one of the females I was in class with, I asked her, I said, well, when you get off of work, now at the time I was a 25 Romeo going through the 25 Delta course. So I did broadcast engineering, computer repair, I did everything. But before that, I had already been researching security and doing IT work and help desk and network administration and all this stuff. So I asked her, I said, well, when you get off of work, what do you do? She's like, oh, well, me and my husband have dinner and, I play with the kids and I watch TV and da-da-da. I said, cool. I said, I spend 2 hours every night researching, studying, and learning. I sit behind a computer screen and I go into Linux. I go into Backtrack. I go into, I don't even think
Yep.
Kali was out yet. I think it was still Backtrack. And I was like,
Just the
I
backtrack get
do
hard. Yeah.
labs and break into things and really practice my craft and get to know it. I was like, so I'm continuously learning. So while you're sitting there getting behind the 8 ball because I know what the Army does at help desk and you ain't doing a damn thing to learn, and then you're going home and not doing anything to learn, I'm consistently evolving and I'm constantly learning. I said, so that's the difference. That's how I know all this. Because when you go through GSEC and GCED and GCIH, it's all basic cybersecurity shit and knowing the keyboard.
Yep.
I was like, it's all stuff I've been doing for the past 10 years. She was like, oh. I'm like, look, it's possible to learn it. Difference is it doesn't take me as long because I've already done it. I've already been doing
Yep.
it. So yes, my wife had to deal with some bullshit for years. But then I got to the point where now it's, hey babe, can you go take the kids to school? Or hey babe, can we go do this? Or what have you? Or I got a doctor's appointment or something like that, and I don't feel like shit because I've put in the work. I've put in the time. And I know if somebody calls me and they know if they call me, I'm gonna be there. So like the work gets done, it gets done in an efficient manner to where now it's a little bit easier because you've laid that ground to your point. But yeah, motivation, mental health, goals, planning, success, all that. Find your mentors that are going to give that to you. And I will leave all of you that are watching with this. Avoid toxic positivity. If somebody is not willing to tell you you're wrong and you need to do something different, you're in the wrong crowd. Because there is no way that being surrounded by a yes man or yes people or yes women or whatever you want to call them is good for your health. You need someone that's going to put you in check because I know I've had people put me in check and tell me I'm wrong. And you need the same thing. Anyone that's going to sit there and tell you you're doing everything right are not people you want in your circle. Find the ones that are going to tell you you're doing something wrong. But other than that, I love you all. You're all my warriors. You're all my family. This has been another amazing episode of Security Happy Hour. I hope to see you all next week. And until then, Brad, me and you will talk. Love you all. Take care. And I'll see you next time.